Hello everyone and welcome to another video on JavaScript programming. Kaushal this side from SimpliCode, and today we are going to see how we can access HTML elements with various JavaScript methods. We will see two different methods today, the getElementsByClassname method and the getElementsByTagname method. Later we will also go through the differences between these two methods and the getElementById method as well. Before we begin, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel and press that bell icon to never miss an update from SimpliCode. So without any further delay, let's get started. So today we are going to use a method that is somewhat similar to document.getElementById method. So we'll be using the document.getElementsByTagname method in JavaScript. As the name suggests, this method is used to access a bunch of similar elements with the same tag. So we have tag name in our method, right? So we can access a bunch of tags with similar name. Like if we have a few div tags present in our program and we want to change each div tag's style, we can do it with the help of this method. So we'll look at the syntax first and then we'll move on to the difference between ID and tag name methods. So let's move on to the programming part directly. What we'll do is we'll create a few div tags first and then we'll change the style of these div tags with specific styling properties. We are not going to use CSS for that, but in JavaScript we have other styling properties as well. So we'll be using those styling properties. So let's create the div tags first. We'll write here div and then let's say we are writing it, this is section 1. So we'll copy this line and we'll create 4 similar div tags, right? We have section 1, 2, 3 and 4. Save it and you can see over here we have 4 different sections present. Now this is a very basic example and here we have different sections present, right? Next up, we'll try to access these div tags with the help of TagName method. So let's add a button over here and then we'll move on to the JavaScript part. So we'll write here, let's use the BR tag and we'll write here input tag. Again we'll write a input type is equals to button and we'll use the onClick method as well. So we'll write here onClick and let's say our function name is fun2 and then we have the value of this button as, let's say, submit. Close the input tag and save it. So here you can see we have a button over here, submit button, and you can see here nothing is happening on clicking on this submit button. So next up what we are going to do is we are going to add functionality to this submit button. For that we have to move to our JavaScript file and we have to create a function over there. So we'll write here in the JavaScript file, we'll write here function fun2 and then we have the body of this function, right? So the syntax is a bit similar to that of the document.getElementById method. What we'll do here is we'll take a variable x and then we'll write here document.getElementsByTagname and then we'll write inside the brackets the name of tag we want to access, right? So here we have added 4 different div tags. So in this case we'll write here div and we can similarly access any of the tags present in a HTML document. We can access paragraph tags, we can access anchor tags and any tag we want to basically. So save it and here now we have a variable x that holds an HTML collection of all the div tags present inside the HTML file. This means that we have an array of references of all the div tags here inside this variable x. So if we try to make changes in a single array element, just like we did in the select box example, wherein we use the array index to access a particular element present at a particular array index, right? So we can do the same here. We'll write here x and then we'll write the index number. So this particular statement will access the element present at number 1, or this particular syntax will access the first div tag of HTML document, because we know arrays start from 0 and at 0 the first element will be present. So this div tag will be present at number 0. and then we are going to use the style property. So we know that X here is not a variable only. Actually X here acts as an object, and we know that different objects have certain properties in JavaScript. So style is one of those properties. And next up we'll write here, let's say font family. So what we are doing is we are doing the CSS part with properties present in JavaScript. So let's say we are changing our font to Courier New. Fine. So this is a font name, and we can use any font name over here. So save it. What will happen now is on clicking the submit button, the font of this particular section, the font of div 1 will change to Courier New. So let's try if it's happening or not. So on clicking the submit button, you can see over here the change between this line and other 3 div tags. Clearly the font is changed. The new font is Courier New, and what we did here is we changed the font family of this particular div tag. So similarly we can make more styling changes to other div tags as well. So let's do it here, and we'll make changes to each of the div tags we have in a HTML file. So let's say here we are using the color property, and we want to change the font color to blue. Fine. Then we'll do the same for element present at number 3. For that we'll write here X, and the index number will be 2. So then again we'll use the style property, and then let's say we are writing here font style. Fine. And the font style we want it to be italic. And then finally we have one more property. Let's say for the last div tag we are using the background color. Fine. And we'll write here the color name is red. So we are good to go now. Save it, and we have 4 different properties over here. For section 4 we are changing the background color. So 3 will be the index number of the last array variable. So save it, and on pressing the submit button you can see the change over here. So for section 1 the font is changed to Courier New. For section 2 the font color is blue. Let me zoom it out a bit to show you guys. You can see over here the color is blue, and then we have italic text in section 3, and finally for section 4 we have the background color as 4, right? So you can see how we are accessing any particular element of the array. Now why we are using these properties separately for each array element? So if we try to make changes on each element of the array, we simply can't do it in JavaScript at once. So if we try to write here, so let's comment this out first. What we'll do is we'll write here x.style.fontFamily. So basically what we want to do is we want to change the font family for all the div tags present, right? Because we know the variable x is holding an array of all the div tags present in our HTML file, right? So we'll save it, and you can see over here if we are clicking on this submit button, you can see nothing is happening. So if we go to our console, and you can see it over here that we have an error here. So it says it cannot set property font family of undefined. So this is the problem with this getElementsByTagname method. To overcome this problem we have a solution as well. So the solution for this problem is we have to use the for loop here. So how this for loop works, so we'll write here for, and then we'll take a local variable I, and the initial value will be 0. Then we'll write here I less than x dot length, because we want to traverse the whole array, right? And then we'll write here the condition I plus plus. So we are good to go. Then we have this body of for loop, and inside here we'll write x, and the index number will be I, because it will keep on changing and we are in a loop. So we'll write here dot style, and then let's say the style we want to do is font weight, and what we want to do is we want to make our font bolder. Fine. So comment this line as well, save it now, and you can see over here everything is clean. Now what will happen is on pressing the submit button the font will change, the font weight will change basically. So let me zoom this, and if we click on this submit button you can see the font is more bolder, right? So if we are using another property here, let's say the font, we are using here background color, and we want the background color to be yellow. Fine. So save it, and on clicking the submit button, you can see the background color for all the div tags for all the 4 section is changed to yellow. Fine. So this is how we can access all the elements of an array at once. Now what we did is we started a loop and traversed every element in the array and applied the same property to each element. So this is how we can do it with the help of TagName method in JavaScript. Now what if we have hundreds of similar elements like div tag present in our website and all of them are present at different locations? So let's try to do it, and what we'll do is we'll insert certain different elements in between these div tags. Fine. So we'll include a form, and then we'll include some radio buttons, and anything we want to do, we can do it. So we'll add some more elements in between these div tags. So here you can see we have inserted 2-3 more elements in between these div tags. So save it, and you can see after each section we have something else. Here we have a form with 2 different text boxes. We have name and age, and then we have a submit button as well. Then after that we have section 2. So this is our section 2. Then after section 2 we have radio button and the value is A. Then we have another radio button B, and in between we have all the div tags present. So basically what we want to do is we want to change the style for each of the div tags, right? So we will change the background color here. So let's say we'll write here red, and what will happen is on clicking the submit button, on clicking this submit button, what will happen is the background color of each div tag. So the background color for section 1, 2, 3 and 4 will change to red. So let's try to do it and let's see if it's working or not. So we'll click on this submit button, and you can see it over here. We have all the div tags with background color as red. So this is working totally fine. One more thing we'll discuss before wrapping up this video is the uniqueness of ID attribute for each element. So we are saying this for a long time that the ID for each element should be unique. Why so? Although we saw in the past videos that we can use the same ID for 2 different elements when we did the same for accessing a CSS styling property using the ID attribute. But if we try to do the same thing with JavaScript, we'll get an error. For example, if we try to access the value of any particular element with the ID attribute, but we have 2 elements in a HTML file with the same ID. So it will throw an error in that case basically. And this is the reason why we use the TagName method in JavaScript, so that if we want to access multiple elements of the same name, we can do it with this method. Because it's not possible to use the ID method separately for each element present in the HTML document, right? Because we have certain same HTML tags present within an HTML document, like we have the div tags here. Similarly, a website is long enough to have multiple similar elements present within it. So that's why we use the document.getElementsByTagname method in JavaScript. Before discussing the class name method in JavaScript, let's look at why accessing an element is important in JavaScript. So we know that the document object model is used to change, add or delete HTML elements. We saw earlier that we could change HTML elements or the CSS style of any element in the document with the help of JavaScript properties. So to make specific changes to those elements, we need to access them using particular methods. So we discussed 2 such methods before, the ID method and the TagName method, right? So let's move ahead and look at the className method of accessing an element in JavaScript. As the name suggests, the main attribute in this method will be the class name. So we know the difference between the class and the ID attribute used in HTML. We know that ID has to be unique for each element, but we know that many elements in an HTML document can have the same class, right? So we used class to access specific CSS properties in the previous videos, and that is the only benefit of using classes in JavaScript. So we can say that a single class can be used by many elements within an HTML document. So let's dig a bit deeper into this concept. So let's say we have 5 elements present on our website and we want to make changes in 3 of these elements, right? So let's write the code here and it will be easier for you guys to understand. So we'll write here in the HTML file, we'll add 5 different elements. So let's say we are writing here div, and then inside this div we'll write this is section 1. We'll copy this, we'll paste it here. So we'll use 2 div elements and 2 paragraph elements, right? So here in this p tag we'll write this is section 3, and then we'll copy this line, paste it again, copy this one as well and paste it here. So we have section 1, section 2, 3, 4 and 5. So out of these 5 different elements, we have 3 div tags and we have 2 paragraph tags. So we'll discuss why we have taken 2 paragraph tags in between the div tags. So we are done with it. Here you can see we have 5 elements present in a HTML document. 3 of them are the div tags. Section 1, 2 and 5 are div tags, and 2 tags in between are the paragraph tags. So now let's suppose we want to change the style of 3 of these elements. Let's say 1, 4 and 5. So we can do it in 2 ways, right? Either we can use the ID method or we can use the class method. However, we can use the TagName method as well, but we have to use 2 different variables for that, right? That will be a lengthy process. Why 2 different variables? Because we have 2 different tags present here, right? We have to create separate variable for the div tag and separate one for the paragraph tag. So that will be a lengthy process. So we'll consider ID method and the class name method for here. So considering the ID method, the document.getElementById method, we have to provide unique ID to each element. So we have to provide unique ID to this div tag, then we have to provide to each and every element here, right? So because we need to access 3 of these elements, so at least we have to provide the ID to those 3 elements which we want to access, right? So in such cases we can use the class name method where we want to access more than one element but not all the elements in an HTML file. So we'll use the class attribute in each element we want to access. So let's say we want to access section 1, 2 and 5. So we'll write here class, let's say the class name is CLS1. We'll copy this, paste it here, and we are accessing 1, 2 and 4 because 1, 2 and 5 are the div tags, so we can access these with the help of TagName method as well. So we'll access 1, 2 and 4. Fine. So we have used the class attribute here. Next up, we'll create a button and then we'll add functionality to a HTML document. So let's create a button here. We'll again use input type is equals to button, and then we have on click, and on clicking it will call func1, and then we have the value as submit. Fine. So save it, and here you can see in the browser we have 5 sections over here. We have section 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Then we have a submit button which will call the function on clicking. So we haven't added functionality till now. So let's move ahead to our JavaScript file and we'll add functionality to a HTML document. So inside this JavaScript file, we'll write here function, and then we have the function name as func1. Then we have the body of this function. So the syntax remains a bit same. So we'll take a variable first and then we'll use the document method to take references of all the elements from a HTML file. So we'll write here where x is equals to document dot get elements by class name, right? And then we'll write the class name here. So the class name is CLS1. Till now what we did was we took the references of all the required elements and stored them inside a variable named x in the form of an HTML collection. So now we can make changes to these elements, and what we'll do is we'll again use the style property to make styling changes in those 3 sections. So we have these three sections present inside an array, and we can access any one or all the three elements, right? So we'll write here X, and then we'll provide the index number. So let's say we want to access section 1, that is the first div tag. So we'll provide the index number as 0. Then we'll write dot style, and this style is a property dot. Then let's say we want to change the font style. So we'll write here font style. Font style will be italic. Save it. So this piece of code will change the font style of the element present at index 0. Save it, and on clicking the submit button here on the browser, we can see the change in this section, right? So if it's not visible, so let me zoom it a bit for you. Here you can see, guys, the font at section 1 is changed to italic, right? So in this case, we have all the three elements present in a array, and we can make changes to each of these elements. So let's try to do it, and we'll use element present at index 1 now. We'll copy this line and we'll paste it here again 2 times, because we want to make changes to all the elements, right? We'll write here 2 and we'll write here 1. And let's say we want to change the font color for this one, and the font color will be blue. For this we'll change the font weight, let's say, and we want to make it bolder. So we'll write here bolder. Save it, and on clicking the submit button, you can see we have all the three sections with some minor changes. The first one is changed and we have italic over here. For the second one we have blue color as font color, and for the third one, which is section 4, we have the font weight as bolder. So you can see the change over here. So this is how we can make change to each element separately, and we can also make changes in all the elements at once as well. So for that we have to use the for loop, just like we did for the TagName method, right? So for that we'll write here, so let's comment these three statements first, and then we'll write here for, and we'll take a local variable here. We'll write here where I is equals to 0. I will start from index 0 and I will go till x dot length, and then we have the condition as I++. So inside the body of for loop we'll write here x, and instead of index number we'll write here I, because we want to traverse the whole array. Then we'll write here style dot, and let's say the style we want is background color. We want the background color to be, let's say, yellow. Fine. So this is how we can use the for loop. Save it, and we'll see on clicking the submit button on our browser, the background color for all the three sections, that is 1, 2 and 4, is changed to yellow. This is how we can use the document.getElementsByClassname method to access all the elements present in an HTML file with a particular class. Next up, let's discuss the difference between the ID method, TagName method and the ClassName method. So we'll discuss when to use which method. So let's start with the ID method. So the ID method is used when we want to access a single element, and we have to provide a unique ID to that element in order to access it. So the ID method is quite useful when we want to work on a single element. Apart from that, if we want to work on more than one element, we have two other methods. We can either use the ClassName method or the TagName method for more than one element. So the TagName method is also quite useful when we want to access elements with the same tag name. We can access all the similar tags present within an HTML document with the help of TagName method. The only problem is we can access similar types of tags only at one time. We can't access two different types of tags with this method. So this is where the ClassName method comes into play. We can access more than one element with this method, and the elements can be different, just like we did here. We had div tag and paragraph tag, right? So the section 1, 2 and 5 are from div tags, and the section 4 and 3 are from the paragraph tags. So we can access two different tags with same class name with the help of ClassName method in JavaScript. So with this we came to the conclusion that more than one element in the HTML file can have the same class and can be accessed with the class name method. So that's all for this video, guys. If you liked this video, do give it a thumbs up. If you have any doubts, do let us know in the comments below. Share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe SimpliCode. Thank you.